Hey, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot.
Hello and welcome everyone to Beyond a Ballot. I'm Rachael here with Amanda. Hi.
Hi, everyone.
It has been such a crazy few weeks and we are finally back together. I'm sitting in front of my mic at home, like in my home studio, and I feel like I haven't been here in forever because the last time we taped, it was in person in Vancouver.
Wasn't that so great to be both to be together, but also to have a live audience? It was so much fun.
As I said that night, it's nice to be able to hug your guest. It's nice to see what people think is funny because we think we're funny, but we never really can tell who's laughing at us. I think we're definitely going to have to do it again because it was really just such an amazing experience.
I also really loved that interview. If you haven't listened to that episode, I really encourage you to listen to it. It was with Selena Robinson and it was incredible. Her ability to both tell and share her story. There was a lot of emotion packed into it. There was some really beautiful storytelling moments, and it left me with a lot of reflection. Like I keep reflecting back thinking, how did this happen? How did this happen to this woman?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that we came at her with a lot of questions and some not so straightforward questions. And I think she was just so gracious and really answered them sincerely. Like she really took it to heart. So that was amazing.
It was. The unfortunate thing that happened that day was, which I'm still holding on to and I don't feel good about, was we had a tech guy. Okay, I'm calling out the tech guy.
Thank you. I was going to bring this up.
I'm calling out the tech guy.
Yeah.
We had a tech guy. So we had a rehearsal during the day. Yep. And during the rehearsal, if you imagine kind of like us live on a stage and behind us is this huge screen. And on the screen is video footage from our podcast. Yes. And Buddy Tech Guy says to us, like midway through, he interrupts to share his thought on this. And his thought was, wow, you guys look like 20 years younger on screen.
Mic drop.
I'm still not over it.
I know. I'm not over it either. I can't believe that somebody felt that they could say that to us. But
who says that? First of all, like if you're going to say, wow, you look 20 years younger in real life, I'm all for it. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
All for it.
Way to spin that in the wrong direction.
But 20 years younger, 20 years, good grief. Anyway.
I know. Well, I guess we just look really young in person. That's what I'm taking away from this. But I also want to talk about another tech guy. And that was the tech guy that worked on the actual sound because we've gotten a lot of feedback. And for those that have listened, it wasn't great audio. And you expect that our audio is going to be great. And we really work hard to do that.
Yeah.
The decision was made that, a mistake was made with the audio by their technician. We made the decision to put up the episode regardless of how the quality was so poor, because it was a really important conversation. And so thank you to everybody who stuck by us and listened to that episode with the terrible sound.
Okay, leave it to you to really address the important tech moment while I just address the vain one. I'm sorry. Good for you though.
You know what? I as soon as you brought it up, I knew what you were going to say because I'm also still upset about that. Okay. So, but we just got so much feedback on how bad it was. So
I had a hard time listening to it too. If that makes anyone else feel better.
It was on full volume in my car, and I was like, "What did she just say?" And I rewind because I don't know if you found this too when we were taping live that it was harder to retain what she was saying. Because you're there with a live audience and you're trying to think about what you're going to ask next. I found that in the comfort of our own home, it's a lot easier to like have a conversation and think about it and process it. But there was so much there. And I really wanted to make sure that I asked the right questions and that our audience was responding. So that's why we shamelessly listened to ourselves in the week after.
Exactly.
Okay. But so much has happened since we last were together.
I'll say
in politics across the country. Some big budget news, and the budget's not coming out until next Tuesday. So a few more days, but boy, do we really have a good look at what's in there. I can only imagine what's still yet to be announced. The Liberals are doing something pretty cool. Why don't you tell us what they've done pre-budget that we don't normally see?
So we sometimes see this. There have been a few provincial budgets that have been rolled out this way, but typically the way that a federal budget works is that it's sort of shrouded in secrecy, right?
Yeah.
So much so that we all talk about, you know, the day of when everybody is ushered into a room and it's like a lockdown and the budget is revealed and then finally it's delivered to Canadians. What's interesting about this budget is in the lead up to it, and I'm saying like a couple of weeks lead up to it.
Oh, yeah.
The federal government has announced different aspects of the budget in advance of the budget. And let me tell you, I am here for it. I am here for it.
You love it.
I love it. It's my favorite thing that they have done in a long time, because I think one of the challenges, and if you're a frequent political observer, you may feel the same way, that the Liberals have had a harder time with communications over the last number of months. And so this, I think, was a communications win, because
it was.
When a budget is released on budget day, it's like a one-hit wonder, right? It's a big deal, but you also have all of the opposing voices. It's very hard to focus in, to zoom in on particular aspects of the budget. So it ends up being like little takeaways and here's the top 5 things you should know. Right. The lead up, this rollout, has allowed them to really dig in to themes within the budget, to things that they really want Canadians to pay attention to, and give them their own signature moment. I love it. I love it. Did you love it?
You know what? I just keep thinking, wow, this is really expensive. How are we affording all of this? But that's just like the raging Tory in me. I think from a stratcoms, a strategic communications perspective, it's awesome. And I also really love when people take risks. And I will say this is a risk. If I was in PMO and somebody came to me with this idea, I'd say, okay, well, can't the opposition just rip apart all these things that we're about to announce? Don't they have like weeks to like cost it or question it, challenge it? So not totally something I'd be sold on if I was making that decision, but I will say it's gone pretty well for them. It's
gone well.
Yeah,
it's gone really well. I mean, they've been able to have these discrete announcements around budget items that they feel are particularly important. And think about, like, one of the things we talk about in politics is getting a little in the weeds, so forgive me, but one of the things we talk about is when you put out a big announcement and then you do something called echo announcements, and you try to make those announcements happen in little pockets across the country so that the big national news outlets carry your news and then smaller news outlets carry your news. This is kind of that in reverse. It's like the echo came first, but it lets all of these outlets across the country tell the story for you. And by the time budget day comes around, it's like we have a really good sense of what this is about, and you're not getting lost. Like, look at our attention span is that of a gnat, right? Like, we have no attention span anymore. Yeah. So to be in and out of a budget, something so critically important, in just one day's time is not giving its due course. I love this. I'm so happy.
But let me ask you this. As a Canadian taxpayer, when you hear all these announcements, and I have referred to them publicly as Oprah's favorite things, you get a car and you get a car, and every day it's a new exciting thing that the Liberal government's going to give me. Do you not at one point say, okay, on budget day, what if they've already spent so much money on so many of these programs? How can there be more? Does that not like trigger something within you to question that? For me, that's where my anxiety lies on this budget.
Well, I think though, for all of those budget items are still in the budget, whether you announce them on one day or on 14 different days.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like, the number's still the number.
Now I have time to think about it. I guess. Normally we just get like the lump sum and then you move on with your life. But yeah, I mean, I'll give kudos to the Liberals on this one. It's been very interesting in terms of framing them as doing something, as having a plan, which we don't typically get out of budgets, like you said, because we just kind of get the document. And have you ever been in budget lockup?
Yes, I have. But I think I called it a lockdown earlier.
Well,
it's kind of like a lockdown too.
Exactly.
Provincially, yes, I have.
And it's pretty wild because they take away your phone. You're in there for hours.
Yes.
In Ottawa, we all used to like rock, paper, scissors for when we were working for ministers, like who had to go to budget lockup.
Totally.
Because it's such a day and you can't say anything. You're there to just learn about the budget. So it's pretty wild experience.
And if you're one of those people who like just want someone to give you the goods, the straight goods on the budget, you need to tune into our podcast next week because we're going to have a breakdown of the budget and we're going to tell you why it matters for you, particularly for women, for moms. What are the big takeaways? We're going to be breaking it down.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Me too.
It's going to be our first budget, and budget day in Ottawa is always so exciting. I'm just going to nerd out for a second because it was always like the big day where we were up all night afterwards celebrating when we were in government. Not so much in opposition, but in government, because there's so much work that goes into it. And shout out to all of the finance minister's staff that are probably working around the clock right now, try to make that budget happen next week. What kind of shoes will she pick out? Does everyone know that the tradition is that the finance minister picks out a new pair of shoes the day before they read the budget? And Chrystia Freeland, being the first female finance minister, is the first one to pick out a pair of high heels. 2 years ago?
Do you want to hear a great Chrystia Freeland story?
Sure.
Okay, I'll make it brief.
Okay.
So I worked on Christia's nomination. Okay, way back. This is going back.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite stories about her has to do with shoes.
Really?
So yes. So
are shoes her thing?
Well,
she likes shoes.
Here's the story. So Chrystia in person is a very small stature. This coming from me, who's 5'3".
And me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were going out to an event with a lot of people that were going to be packed into a pub. We arrive at the pub and we realize that it's this long, narrow pub. Sorry, no, I need to back it up. Before we were leaving for the pub, Chrystia came in and she was wearing, and this will be signature now for all of you, she was wearing kind of like a shift dress with pearls and running shoes. And I was like, Chrystia, this is not the look, girl. Like, we need to throw some pumps on this outfit. Okay.
That's hilarious.
And she was like, no. Cause like we're walking over to the pub and I've got a lot to do and I'm running around with,
did she have pumps in her purse? Did she have an extra pair of shoes?
She had running shoes.
Bold move.
So we arrive at this pub. It is jam packed. It's a long, narrow pub. And what we're introducing Chrystia. And what does this woman do? She hops on a table in her running shoes to make sure that the people at the back of the room can hear her.
Well, she was doing gymnastics, so that's why she needed the running shoes.
I loved this moment. I was like, here I was all worried about, there's a theme in our podcast today. Here I was worried about the vanity that she's not, she doesn't have the right shoes. Meanwhile, she's thinking practically about what she needs. So I think it's really interesting when we talk about like the new pair of shoes that the finance minister will wear. And my story with Chrystia really begins with a pair of shoes.
Yeah, and maybe she'll wear running shoes. I would actually really like that if the first woman finance minister wore running shoes to the budget. I'm pretty sure one of either Jim Flaherty or Joe Oliver picked out running shoes at some point. Probably Joe Oliver. Now that
I guarantee you that Rachel's going to be Googling that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I love this tradition as I love every parliamentary tradition. Okay, let's jump into polls because since we last spoke, they've been a little bit crazy. We saw last week a poll come out and it said that the Conservatives were 12 points down from where they were before.
Shrinking to a 12-point lead.
12-point lead. Oh, that's even crazier than I thought.
Yes.
That's really small.
It's crazy.
And then Abacus
they
data.
Had a 20 percentage point gap a month ago. So there was 42.8% support for the Conservatives versus 23.8% for the Liberals. This is the Nanos poll. This was a week ago.
Nanos, that's what I was trying to remember.
And then they had it shrunk down to just a 12-point lead, which is
That's
big deal. Huge deal.
Big deal. In the Tory circles, there was a lot of question like, where did this come from? What was it that was causing it? I don't know. Maybe it was some of those budget announcements over the last couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Who knows? You can speculate all you want. But then this week, we got the Abacus data poll, which gives the Tories the largest lead they've ever had. It says Conservatives open up their largest lead yet. So we've talked about polls before, but who to believe? I mean, as a political strategist, I always say, like, never believe a poll. Never believe a poll. Sorry to all my friends that are pollsters. But this kind of back and forth is a weird week. We don't see this a lot, especially this far out from a federal election.
No, and that kind of volatility is really, it's interesting because we could look at it in two ways. One, either the polls are totally wrong, like they're just not capturing sentiment appropriately or accurately. Or we could say that there's a lot of volatility in people's minds around what's happening right now, and that small things can shift voter intention really easily. That is an interesting narrative. We don't know if it'll hold because we haven't seen a trend yet. But over the next few weeks, if we continue to see this volatility in the polls, we may be seeing a little bit of like voter questioning, right? I'm not sure what the right thing is. What do you think about that? Possible?
I always wonder if these polls really do correlate to issues. And, you know, I touched on the Liberals coming out with all these budget announcements, but Pierre was really pushing the carbon tax, the April 1st deadline. And I wonder if, you know, that was really a hot button issue, something that most Canadians, most provinces, leaders of provinces, the premiers, were in support of. And I wonder if everyone rallied around that. And then after April 1st, maybe that was reflected in some of the polls as well. And now there's been a rebound. I don't know. I think pollsters are magic, and I can't figure out how they come up with these numbers, but it's always nice when we get a sense of kind of where we're at.
We also saw some massive volatility on the very popular question about popularity.
Yes.
Leader popularity. So Nanos had, at the beginning of March, had Poilievre ahead at 36% compared to only 19% for Trudeau. Ouch. Now, or a week ago, Poilievre was sitting at 33%. Trudeau was sitting at 21%. That is a big change. So something's going on. I would like to believe,
what is it?
As the resident Liberal on this podcast, that it has to do with a pretty effective communication strategy by the Liberals. They've been coming out swinging, not just on their pre-budget announceables, but also, don't you think that Trudeau's been a little spicier lately?
I haven't noticed it, but I also don't watch him religiously. So I don't know. But I also think that Pierre has done like a really great job, not to, you know, play our partisan politics here, but honestly, have you seen the rallies that he's doing across the country? And like some of his positioning has been really strong. He was in Montreal in Anthony House Father's riding. And talking to the Jewish community, and like that visual was really interesting. So I think, I mean, I guess we'll just have to speculate because I don't know we don't know changing, riding this wave, but does it really even matter because we're so far from the election? Who knows?
Or are we?
Oh, are we diving into election speculation? It's my favorite topic.
Well, let's talk about carbon pricing. Carbon pricing.
Exactly.
And like the NDP position. What's happening?
Right. I don't know. Is the love affair over? Do you think that this confidence and supply motion is on the way out?
Well, so for our listeners, we'll give you a little recap of what's going on. So on April 1st was the increase and
to the carbon tax.
For the carbon tax. And one of the things that was talked about really broadly was this idea that the premiers were really pushing back in a lot of the provinces around the increase. This led to the prime minister going out on defense, but I actually thought that some of the communications was better than I've seen in a while. So I liked the change in tact. And that was twofold. One, to remind people that the rebate that individuals get in most cases is more than they've paid out. So really reframing the affordability issue in the Liberals' advantage. And two, pushing back on the premiers to say, really? Well, do you have a better idea? And then the premiers kind of having to be silent about it because they really don't. So that was really interesting. That happened over the last week. Rachael probably has a slightly different view of it, so we'll get there.
She could see me shaking my head here, but like, that's okay.
I don't know, Amanda.
That's
that sounds
high-level Liberal overview. Yeah.
The other thing that happened, though, was that we're seeing some resistance from the NDP.
Yeah.
Which is strange because this is a long-held NDP position. So why the flip-flop? And could the flip-flop really result in a huge problem for the Liberals, a problem that could lead us to the polls? What do you think?
Oh, that would just be so wonderful, especially after that Abacus data poll that talks about the Tory lead. I think it's just a little bit of turbulence. My gut is saying this is not going to end in an election. With that said, it's weird. I keep getting people messaging me that we don't talk about this often, and so I'm going to put it out there. But a lot of people are questioning whether or not this supplying confidence motion actually correlates the motion which the NDP will vote in favor of the government to keep them in power until 2025.
Yep.
People question whether or not that correlates to some politicians being eligible for their pensions, namely Jagmeet Singh, who is up for his pension in, I believe, February of 2025. So my gut always goes back to, okay, at the end of the day, unless we're in March of 2025, I'm probably not looking at an election anytime soon, which is unfortunate because I'd love to do it, but I'd love if we were in it. But I really think that this is maybe the NDP getting a little bit burly in order to fundraise and say, we are fighting on this issue. We're fighting even with the government, and we're going to stand up for Canadians, and you should support our party. I think it's a fundraising tactic more than anything.
But such a bizarre one. Like, it's weird to flip-flop on your own party's position on this issue. And the Prime Minister really called him out today. He was
I didn't even see it. What did he say?
Yeah, he was hammering today.
Really?
He was basically saying, like, there are moments, I'm paraphrasing now, but there are moments when there's going to be opposition to something that is like core or critical to your base or to the people that have voted for you. Yeah. And in those moments of opposition, it's not the time to acquiesce. It's not the time to say, oh, okay, then since you don't like it, we're going to not do that anymore. It's the time to have to step up your game and make the argument, which I suppose is what the Prime Minister feels that he's doing. What I don't like about this NDP position is that it feels weak to me. It feels weak. It feels, wishy-washy. It feels flip-floppy. It doesn't feel like I can depend on what you say if you're just going to change your party's position on a whim. So I'd like to know from Jagmeet Singh, if you're listening, what is your position? What is your position, Jagmeet Singh? And if it's changing, what is the way that you want to address climate change in this country?
Okay, so this drives me crazy.
Why?
The opposite argument that I hear all the time. Like, nobody has a plan for climate change except for the Liberals with the carbon tax. And I don't really think that that's fair. I think that there are climate policies that exist in other parties. I think just sweep all the premiers under the rug or the Conservatives under the rug as like having no plan isn't really a fair assessment. I mean, the Conservatives have talked about LNG and using that to propel global carbon policies, like to lower carbon emissions globally. I find this argument to be interesting. Like, do we sell LNG globally to countries that are burning coal right now and like make emissions globally go down? Because that's something that's being talked about in conservative circles and within the provinces as well. But it's kind of being framed on the Liberal side as like, okay, well, what's the opposite? What's the opposite of a carbon tax? Well, they've put forward their plan. They're saying the carbon tax doesn't work. Let's look at other energy policies like LNG as a potential stepping stone to cleaner energy. We can dive into energy policy, but I just like coming back to that. The premiers don't have a plan for the plan is to get rid of the carbon tax. That's the opposite of implementing the carbon tax. And then having an energy plan, a clean energy plan, is something completely different, I think.
Yeah, but I think most people would say that those things need to go together, right? Like if you're going to get rid of the thing that does exist, then you should probably have a plan for the thing that will replace it.
And then the opposite would be
the silence is deafening from a lot of premiers right now.
I think that a lot of premiers feel that the silence on other energy like LNG is also deafening. It's a wild. I've just recently gotten into this energy policy stuff, and I think it's fascinating. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, what are they even talking about? One day we'll do like a dive on it, like maybe a big explainer episode. But
yeah, that would be good.
It would be good. And it's so fascinating.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. I want to give Trudeau some props here.
Oh my God.
This week.
Rachel, why?
Because I thought he did a phenomenal job at the foreign interference inquiry.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen him testify before in different committees and stuff, and just for those listening, having the Prime Minister testify in an inquiry or a committee is very rare. So when it happens, it's big news. It's really interesting. This one specifically, the foreign interference inquiry, because of the level of confidential information, national security issues. So my desire to watch it was really about like, how does he answer these questions and not sound like he has no answers, but also not cross the line in terms of security issues. And at one point there was he was telling a story about being in a car and CSIS was briefing him. And I was like, I totally get where he is in this story. And I don't feel like he's hiding anything, but like he's not telling, obviously he's like really watching his words as to not step over the line of saying too much. I'll give him some real credit because I don't think that was easy. He was there for many hours.
Totally.
And I actually thought he did pretty well. He should speak like that at the leaders debates. He'd do really, really well. I was super impressed, actually.
Yeah. I agree. I thought he did excellent. I thought he really kind of in some ways quashed the issue, which is interesting because it's a huge, it's an enormous issue, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the big question that came out of the inquiry this week was the limitations that were on the Prime Minister to respond to those media leaks like a year ago.
Yeah.
Really allowed this story to snowball. And so the question is, does it take a public inquiry to enable a response to something like this because of the national security considerations? And if so, that's a problem. We need to find a way out of that. So many of the things that he and some of the members of PMO were able to deliver really gave context, really gave a more thorough understanding of what actually was happening behind the scenes. But all of them were handcuffed from sharing any of those any of that information when it was critically important to do so. So I think that's a problem. But
I think that you made the point there in that statement that of the value of public inquiry. I mean, I watched as somebody that's like pretty engaged on this issue. And I felt a little bit better. Like I felt like they shared enough information with me. And that, I kind of had a better grasp of what's going on.
Yes.
Not everything, obviously, but I think that just showed that there was a need for this public inquiry. And
for sure,
I'm sure it was not easy for anybody to testify. We saw Aaron O'Toole, who was the former leader of the Conservative Party during the election in 2019. And talk about some of those issues that arose during that election, like from the conservative side. And he talked about 9 ridings being impacted by foreign interference. And there's been a lot of, Michael Chong has been told by CSIS that the Chinese government have tried to interfere in some of his affairs. And Kenny Chu, who ran here in Richmond, BC after the election, shortly after the 2019 election, raised a flag that perhaps the Chinese government was involved in the outcome of his riding. Mm-hmm. So there's just been a lot of stories, and finally this inquiry is allowing us to kind of piece it all together,
totally,
and look at it from all the different parties. And also I think it's a good thing that they're doing this pre-US election as we get closer to the Trump run in the fall, so that Canadians have less of an opportunity to equate what happened in the 2019 election in Canada with what the US narrative is, because I think most of the people that have testified in this inquiry have made very clear that we are not facing what Donald Trump came out and said happened in the last US election, that the outcome is the outcome and that wasn't impacted, but perhaps there was favorite candidates and efforts to try and disrupt some of those ridings, perhaps.
And just to correct, is 2021, not 2019.
2020.
2021. 2021.
O'Toole. You know what? That was such a wild time, because we had the election in 2019 right before the pandemic, and then they called the federal election basically in the middle of the pandemic.
Yes.
In 2021. So there was a really short window there.
Yes.
That's why it's confusing.
Yeah. We mush those things together. We're going to hear a lot more about foreign interference.
Yes,
I think you're right to raise the American election, because it will likely be a big theme of that election, or at least a big issue that the candidates have to contend with. Leaders across the globe are dealing with this when it comes to elections. And the question, as you've rightly pointed out, has been, were our elections compromised?
Exactly.
And I think that the answer to that question is a resounding no. And I think that, in fairness to the former conservative leader, he made that very clear in his testimony. And while he, raised concerns about some ridings, about frankly his own job, he was clear that he did not feel in any way that the integrity of the election was at stake, that the results are legitimate. Why is this so important? Why are we talking about this? It's so important because this is the cornerstone of democracy, right? And if there are questions, or if we're left with legitimate questions about the legitimacy of our elections, it is a monster issue for democracy. So it is good to know, at least for now, that is not the case.
Yes, exactly. And I think that, good on Canada for having this inquiry, and it's ongoing, and then eventually a report. I think the report's coming soon, in the next the midway report. They pushed it off. It's like a halfway report.
So many.
The halftime show.
Totally.
Aaron O'Toole is performing.
But you know what? It's been, like you said off the top, it's been a crazy week. It's been a fun week in Canadian politics. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot to catch up on, especially leading into the budget. It's a lot for everybody to wrap their heads around, because you may be into the public inquiries or not. You may be really interested in carbon pricing and what's happening there. You may have heard about some of these polls. And then the backdrop to all of that is all of these announcements that the Liberals are making.
That's
so
right.
It's a lot to dig into. I know people are busy, especially moms are busy people, right?
Exactly.
How much
and
time
that's why
do you
they
have
come
to
here.
read all this? Exactly.
That's why they come here, so we can break it down. And we didn't even talk about housing, which is obviously a big priority of this budget, but I'm sure we will definitely
we're going to
dive into it next week.
Oh yeah.
Because really we're waiting to see what else comes
Huge theme in the budget.
Huge theme.
Affordability, housing.
What do you think? Let's right before we wrap here, let's put our craziest prediction for the budget Anything that you're watching for?
I mean, I feel like we know now because of this rollout.
I know.
I think that this is what I think. I think that the Conservative Party has done a formidable job of framing what the next election should be about. And I think that they've done a formidable job of putting the Liberals into a corner on the issue of affordability. And because of that, I think that the Liberals are now, it's a necessity to respond in kind. So I think the biggest themes in this budget will be around affordability and in particular housing. And I think the proof to back that up is the fact that a number of the announcements that were made over the last few days or a week and a half or so have been under those buckets, under those themes. What do you think?
I'm really wondering as we inch towards this election, whenever it is, I mean, it theoretically could be before the next budget. Yeah. I wonder what measures will be in the budget that will impact Canadians' pocketbooks today. Yeah. Like not building houses 30 years from now, but in the next tax, and we're all doing our taxes right now. So Canadians are especially aware of what, how much taxes are costing us. What is going to help? Like, is there a tax cut for blank? Is there some kind of better program? I mean, seeing them add money to the $10 a day daycare, childcare program is a big one. They've already announced that.
Love that one.
I love that one. And hopefully we'll see more affordable spaces across the country. But what is it that they're going to gear up and roll out as a big announcement on budget day? Is there going to be something that really, really impacts Canadians' bottom line in the next year? That's what I'm hopeful for, I think.
Okay. Good predictions.
We'll see who's right.
I know.
All right. So I guess we're going to leave it there. But again, please do not forget Tuesday, Super Tuesday. It is budget day in Canada on Tuesday, the 16th, and the 15th we'll be watching which shoes Chrystia Freeland goes and purchases. But aside from that, we will be back next week with a really exciting breakdown, the ABCs of the federal budget and what we saw in this year's budget as well. All right, Amanda, I'll talk to you next week.
Speak to you soon.